Okay, what we've organised next is two panels of industry experts. I've asked Sarwan to also join us. I'll kick off with a few questions and get the discussion going, but hopefully you guys will join in with any points that you would like to discuss, questions, whatever else you'd like to raise. So if I can ask to join us on the stage, Professor Dame Julia King, who's the Vice-Chancellor of Aston University. Thank you very much. George Gillespie, who's the Chief Executive of Mira. Jean-Luc Paola-Galloni, who is the Vice President of Sustainable Development at Valeo. Robin Mackie, Chief Technical Officer and Group Strategy Director at Smiths Electric Vehicles. And Richard Parry-Jones has had to nip off, so he's not going to join us. So I think we've got enough on the stage. If I could just start with maybe you, Jean-Luc. A lot of different discussions so far this afternoon. You know, you work for one of the biggest automotive suppliers. What's your observation on the future and future technologies?
Well, first of all, maybe as one of the foreign representative and coming from a French group, thanks very much to all the organizers and thanks very much for inviting me. I'd just like to say that we are growing stronger in UK with a very recent acquisition of CPT that now it's part of Valeo UK. So we're being present, and this is also why my presence here today. Well, as far as the future of technology is concerned, I'm quite comfortable with what my predecessor has just said. And if I take his slide on the ABC segments of the, I would say, the percentage of penetration and the calendar phase of the different technology, I'd like to make a comment on that slide. It is important to be extremely innovative and to bring the innovations quite ahead. My group covers 80% of your C segment, and I would say that a lot of the A segment that you show today were C 10 years ago. When I joined the company and we were about to launch the start-stop, everybody knows we are the inventor of the start-stop. In the years 2004 and 2005, if you were talking to many OEMs, they were not that many believers in micro-hybrid systems. Now there are more than 25 brands of cars worldwide, and 4 CEOs of OEMs have said that start-stop should be a commodity and almost obliged by regulation. So this is, I think, very important to have in mind in the way technologies are penetrating the market, how tier ones, how SMEs, how all the integration of the value chain throughout the supply chain is extremely important to drive innovation from the first inventor, from the labs, from the universities, from the SMEs, through the final customers, through the tiers and the OEM.
Julia, if I can maybe bring you in. Your day job is obviously the university, but you're also the business ambassador for low carbon. I mean, we've heard a lot this afternoon on what's going to happen and what has happened. I mean, from your perspective, is enough happening? Is it happening quickly enough? Is it getting to market as quickly as you would like? What's your perspective?
Well, first of all, the one part of the UK economy that is definitely growing is the green technologies and the reducing carbon. I mean, I think the figure was that we've seen over the past year 5% growth in green technology and low carbon manufacturing areas against an economy that's not growing at all. So I think that's very exciting, and I think for those of you who are in that area, like Jean-Luc, stick with it, you're in the right place. With my Committee on Climate Change hat on, because I sit on the UK's Committee on Climate Change, which advises the government on carbon budgets, I am concerned that we're not moving fast enough in reducing carbon. But I think we have to recognise the context in the developed countries of their financial climate that we're in. And I think it's not surprising that people's interests have turned to other concerns. I think we need to be emphasising much more strongly the efficiency opportunity, so the reduced cost from driving, higher efficiency, which drives lower CO2. And I do actually share with Jean-Luc that feeling that actually as we start to come out of this recession, that we are really going to see a very fast acceleration. I mean, I clearly spend a lot of time looking at climate science and the developments we're seeing. And I don't know whether you've been noticing, but we've had a number of very important scientific studies lately which have just been reinforcing that the impact of man-made CO2 in the environment is actually quite potentially rather stronger and moving rather faster than we had been predicting. And I think over the next 10 years we will start to feel the pressure much more strongly. And I think our Chinese colleagues already know some of the impacts of climate change are happening. They have a government with some very, very strong decarbonisation targets, which they don't often get the credit for. I think those pressures are only going to get stronger and will accelerate once we're through the recession, we'll start to accelerate the implementation of low carbon solutions. And can I just say one thing? Some people today have said we have these technologies competing for dominance. I kind of like us to get out of that idea that different technologies are fighting each other for dominance. We have almost 1 billion cars globally today. By 2030, it's quite likely we'll have 2 billion. By 2050, we could have 3 billion. If one technology is dominating, we've had it. We're suffering today from the dominance of fossil fuel technologies. So there's plenty of market out there in the medium to long term for all of these exciting technologies. So let's not kind of start comparing them with each other and playing them off against each other. Everything we've heard about today has fantastic benefits. Let's think about having all of them.
Robin, you have a electric vehicle company. What's your point of view? How well are you doing?
Well, it's interesting. I listened to everybody today and I was interested in the timeline. So if I looked at that timeline, I shouldn't actually be here because my business is not going to move to any scale until something around 2015, 2016 at the earliest. What I have to say is that the business is here today. The future is here today, but in a very niche market. Smith's complete focus is what I call return to base logistics. And we have 6 customers. Last year we delivered 250 vehicles, only 50 of which were in the UK, the balance were in the US. This year, for the first time, with one fleet that's crossed the 1 million miles mark of electric miles, which is a big milestone in its own right, and we've moved away from being in the marketing budget, where people would buy vehicles because they wanted Fred Smith at FedEx to stand next to one and declare to the world that he's going to save it through electrification, to actually being part of the replacement budget for those companies. So commercial electric vehicles are here today. Now, can the technology be improved? Can we take some of the fine examples of the innovation that's going on in the UK at the moment and apply it? Yes, we can. But what I'm here to say to you is the market is here today, and it's developing quickly.
If I can bring in George, is that something you're seeing at Mira?
Like some of the comments that were made earlier, for the 20-odd years I've been in the automotive industry, fuel cells have been 10 years away, but I do get a sense that the rate of technology development is accelerating. And we've looked at products like Robin's or alternative and competing products, and they do seem to be closer to market, maybe focusing on that business-to-business market as opposed to trying to sell to retail. And that area does seem to be accelerating ahead of maybe some of the trends we might have said 5 years ago. The other point I'd make, not actually to do with the technology, is more actually to pick up on something that Sarwant said. So I was really pleased to see your presentation because I thought we'd missed a little bit of a trick through the day in that when it comes to the long-term global challenges, we've got, I think, 4. We've talked a lot about 3 of them, which is getting off carbon fuel, dealing with greenhouse gas emissions, safety. But the 4th one is congestion, because, again, if we're going to go from 1 billion to 2 billion to 3 billion vehicles, it's not going to be a lot of fun, because you're not going to be able to drive them very much in the cities, particularly combined with ongoing global urbanization. And dealing with that congestion issue is just as important as dealing with some of those other issues. And that's the area that touches on something that's close to my heart, which is the intelligent mobility piece, is back to what JLR mentioned in terms of the connected vehicle, connected infrastructure. And for me, the interesting bit is, and I've said this before, is that in the UK here, bringing it all the way back to the UK, Great Britain, one thing we're world class at is we are world class at congestion. And we live in the most crowded island in Europe. We have, is statistic, we have the highest level of congestion in Europe, but we're also very good at finding solutions. We're a good technology development country. And for me, the big opportunity is to go and find those commercial opportunities to deal with urbanization, transportation, congestion issues, and doing that through the intelligent mobility piece. That, to me, is one of the great opportunities that we have as a nation.
Questions, points, any topics anyone would like to raise with the other panel? All gone to sleep? No?
Late in the afternoon.
No? No? A quick question from me then, Sarwan, before we move on. You've got the great and the good of the automotive industry here. You're the man who's responsible for looking into the future. In terms of providing the right solutions in terms of mobility for especially younger people, our future customers, score out of 10, what's the industry doing well? What are the areas that maybe they're not looking at closely enough?
I think the industry is doing much better than it did a few years back. I remember once a trip to Japan where I met some of the big Japanese car companies, and they, at that time, a few years back, they realized, and in Japan, this trend of the Gen Y not buying cars is even much more accelerated than it's here in Europe and the US. And they found it there that these youngsters want personal mobility. They don't want cars. And that's when they came up with new products. You know, the Toyota Scion was developed around positioning the vehicle, and it was not so much meant, you know, personally I wouldn't like a Toyota Scion the way it looks, but the youngsters liked it, and it had a bigger audio system and a focus on the audio system and the connectivity in the car than actually on the styling of the car or the horsepower of the engine. So I think the OEMs realize this, and more now with the you know, we call them now the internet or the iPhone generation, they realize that connectivity is more important. I think they also realize, the automotive industry also realizes you need seamless travel between the car and the infrastructure. So some of these, you know, the new generation of vehicles we're seeing, for example, in Europe, like the Twizy, really interesting, exciting car. The way BMW's engineered the Mini, I think is very interesting. So I think the good news is the OEMs have realized what they need to do. And I'm really looking forward to some of these connected technologies that will come in. We're just starting to see examples or theories of this technology, but very soon we'll start seeing them in commercialization. And I think that's when we'll see more acceptance.
If I can quickly jump in what you just said, unfortunately, it's not something we are researching or producing in England, but actually in Germany. That's the way I explain, societally speaking, the Park for You remote. It's not just nice because you get outside of your car and the car parks itself, but it will revolutionize the parking systems. When you think of underground parking, you will save extra space. It's going to become, in the very near years, a new system of valet parking where it will really bring new venues of architecture in the cities and in really handling the parking systems.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on, expand on something that Sarwan said in terms of, the new generation looking for the connected car. They want to bring their smartphone, their tablet into the vehicle. The challenge then for the vehicle manufacturers is as much to do with connectivity, because the half-life on their vehicle is 10 years. The half-life on our digital smartphones is perhaps 6 months. So how do they ever keep up? It's around connectivity. And then the second major issue is around, and was touched on, someone touched on it earlier, was around the HMI actually presenting data safely to drivers, which is something OEMs are very good at, presenting data safely to a driver who's traveling at 70 miles an hour. That's not something that smartphone manufacturers are good at and skilled at. And there's both a challenge and an opportunity there.
Any other questions? Please, lady with the blonde hair. Am I allowed to say that these days?
Yes, certainly. My name's Mary Page, and I'm very privileged to work at the National Composite Centre, part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. With the research that you did, Mr. Singh, with the individual mobility transport in that sense. Is anybody working on sort of ones that are podular in the sense that they could be interconnected, so you can have individual travel when you would like it, but then travel with friends or family should you wish to?
Yeah, I think there are a number of solutions like that. I don't know if you heard about relay rides in the US, which is a peer-to-peer sharing club, which is if you don't emotionally attach to your car, it allows you to use somebody's car on a pay-per-use model. But what it also does is allows carpooling, and especially in California, sometimes can be very useful. So there are a number of such examples, and there are a number of mobility apps coming in these days. I think the beauty of having an iPhone and these apps is that very easily and very quickly you can get people together to travel together, share transport. I mean, the whole concept of Zipcar came from college students who didn't want to own a car but wanted a vehicle when they needed it. So there are some brilliant examples. Happy to share them later with you.
Sorry, I was thinking more on the actual physical attachment, or in this smart vehicle way, so that your individual mode of transport is then able to be connected to another vehicle rather than the individual traveller going from and sharing with other people. Has anybody got, you know, a system or thinking along those lines?
Are you talking about two cars traveling together?
Together, yeah, or sort of, you know, almost making a little road train of some sort with your Segway type item.
Valeo?
Well, we are working obviously on the connectivity segment, on the car-to-car connection. I'm not sure we are really doing what you described on the two cars attached, if I got your point. But yes, on the connectivity, on the car-to-car and car-to-infrastructure and grid-to-car and infrastructure, yes, obviously.
I think there's some European Union projects ongoing on this, especially with trucks. So 2, 3, 4 trucks can follow each other. But I think there's still a few years from commercialization.
Thank you very much. Anything else before we move on? Neville. Number 2, please.
Yes, Neville Jackson, Ricardo. Ricardo's leading the European platooning program on joining vehicles together and making it work. And the technology itself is not so difficult. It's been around for quite some time, but we've progressed it a lot further so that the vehicles can become one rather than just a single entity. The challenge really is the legal framework and the acceptance. That's probably going to be more of a limiting factor than the technology, to be honest. It's relatively simple to do. But I do have a question, which was, with all these new technologies that we're likely to introduce to the market, is there a danger of confusing the consumer?
Who would like to take that?
I mean, from the commercial vehicle perspective, and I know it's really not consumer, but it's almost business to business, I've been amazed how educated they actually are, how much they actually know about the technology and what they want from the technology, to the extent that with the 6 primary customers that we've got, we've started to introduce them into our design and development cycles, so that we can do things like think about modularization of their batteries. The customers don't want to overpay for energy. So how do we provide a solution that gives a duty cycle to the vehicle that's actually required? So from a commercial perspective, there's a great deal of understanding across the commercial sector. They've done their homework, they understand. Can't really comment too much about the pass car side, but you know, there's an education out there.
Maybe, Neville, I can give you kind of an oblique answer. Certainly from a Formula One point of view, we have spoken and researched on numerous times about whether we should be more entertainment and do away with the expensive technology, or whether the technology was important. And there have been a number of people who thought the expensive technology was something that we shouldn't bother with and we should just put on a good show. And every time we've researched it, it's amazing how the technology, the importance of the technology comes through, and how educated and how important it is to certainly our customers. So I think the only thing I would say is don't underestimate the consumers. I think they know a huge amount, varies country to country, but I think it's a very, very important part. On that note, I think we need a Formula One style pit stop. If we can say thank you very much to this panel and then move on to the next group of victims. So thank you very much indeed.